Did you know the band Ghost was inspired by this Italian metal band that formed back in 1977? Today I'm talking about the new album by Death SS. I will give you some history on the band, talk about how they influenced Ghost, and then go into my review of the new album called The Entity, and finally end with my final thoughts and score. Death SS was formed by Stefano Silvestri, who goes by the name Steve Sylvester, hence the initials SS. And they were one of the first bands to play what they called horror music, which blends heavy metal, horror, and occultism. They are considered one of the earliest bands to incorporate a very theatrical and satanic image on stage. They wore corpse paint and were influential in the development of black metal aesthetics and music. Now, I know what you're thinking. It was done before. Alice Cooper did it many years before them. Black Sabbath played that type of music, and Kiss wore makeup. But this band took what they were doing and took it to another level. It was the entire band putting on this big, elaborate stage show. As for the music, they combine different elements of metal genres. Sometimes they sound like doom, sometimes they play speed metal. There was also a period in the late 90s, early 2000s where they delved into industrial metal. They released many albums over the years. Today I want to focus on the new album, but before I do that, let me talk about what you all came for, and that is how they influenced the band Ghost. Basically, Ghost took everything they were doing and did it in their own way, but it's not really speculation or anything. Tobias Forge has been very open about saying that Death SS was a major inspiration for both their concept and aesthetic. He says the band was an influence on Ghost and still is. Tobias Forge took inspiration from their image and stage show and really made it his own. The biggest difference was that Tobias Forge wanted his band to be more melodic and operatic. So he basically took what the band Death SS was doing and he mixed it with art rock and AOR vocals. Steve Sylvester has said that he was honored to have this band take what they did and make it their own. Not only that, the fans have always respected the fact that they were influenced by this band. You don't really hear accusations of Ghost ripping them off or anything like that. Now let me talk about the new album by Death SS called The Entity, and then I'll get into the review. This album contains 12 tracks. It's a concept album about the entity, which is something that has been spoken about over the years in mythology. It was released on May 9th, 2025 through Lucifer Rising Records and produced by Steve Sylvester, who remains the band's leader and vocalist. In addition, he worked with Tom Dalgety, who has worked with bands like Rammstein, Ghost, and The Cult. The album mentions many literary figures like Aleister Crowley and characters like Jack the Ripper and many others, and the music continues with a heavy metal and gothic and very dark and theatrical type of music. I'm going to talk about the songs now, as there are 12 tracks and the songs are in the 3 to 4 minute range. Opening track, Ave Adonai, has everything you would expect in a horror-themed metal song. It has dark synths, Halloween sound effects, creepy choir vocals, Latin prayers to ward off demons, and it's just a dark, heavy metal or even doom metal sound. I thought it was a good song to kick off the album. Not anything spectacular, but it sets the stage for what's to come. Therefore, it was a good opener. Justified Sinner has some pounding drums, female vocals, bright keyboards, and a big and theatrical sound. This is a song where you can hear where bands like Ghost, even Lordi, get their sound. I like the fact that it was more of a radio-friendly song with hooks and had a big theatrical 80s sound. On the other hand, it kind of sounds like they're trying to do what Ghost were doing, but that's debatable because we all know they were the first ones to do this style. I just thought they might have been going for that Ghost type of sound, but otherwise, very good second track. Now, moving on to the next 2 tracks on the album. Next 2 songs are Possession and Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, the latter of which was a single. Possession has some creepy bells, big guitar riffs, and punk rock energy, while Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde had a slower pace with more sound bites from old horror films, which I imagine to be from that old Hammer film of the same name. Possession was good, but may went a little overboard with the horror movie cliches. For example, they bring back the priest saying those Latin prayers, while the Dr. Jekyll song overuses the movie's sound bites. But with that being said, they were both fun tracks, and they stayed within the overall sound and theme of the album. Now I'm in the middle of the album, and I'm wondering if they're going to keep the same sound or throw us a few curveballs, so let's find out. Next 2 songs are called Two Souls and Out to Get Me. These 2 songs show the band at the 2 extremes. One of them is fast and furious, and the other one is softer and emotional. Two Souls begins with those Phantom of the Opera style keyboards and then goes into a speed metal direction. Not only that, it has elements of black metal and has some blazing guitar solos. Out to Get Me, on the other hand, starts with some arpeggiated guitar chords and a slower pace, has more of that power ballad format. I was surprised to put these two songs right in the middle of the album and one after the other because they're such contrasting songs. But I'm also glad they started to switch gears a little bit because the first four songs were kind of similar. So it shows me they're willing to experiment. You might be thinking the next two songs are going to continue in this style, but you might be wrong because I think you're going to be surprised at what they do next. Next two songs are called Hell is Revealed and Love Until Death. And the first song is kind of, sounds a little cheesy. The second one is a power ballad, so let's talk about them. Hell is Revealed sounds like one of those catchy European power metal songs similar to what the band Lordi is doing right now. It's a big contrast from the previous two songs that were a little darker. This is more like a campy B-movie from the 50s. That's what I thought when I heard. And then the other song, Love Until Death, was a power ballad, but it had that European, catchy, melodic sound with lots of hooks. I enjoyed these two songs as well. I've noticed they kind of switched gears a little bit after these two songs, and they were a little darker. You might be thinking they aren't going to be changing the style at all, but maybe you're wrong again. Next two songs are called Whitechapel Wolf and The Evil Painter. Again, they are some completely different sounding songs. Whitechapel Wolf sounds like some 80s heavy metal, slightly reminiscent of Merciful Fate or King Diamond, but leaning more towards a glam metal sound. Whereas The Evil Painter takes a different approach and it sounds like 80s goth rock or post-punk with more of a new wave type of sound. So you can see there are different types of songs. I thought the song Whitechapel Wolf was good, but also a little cheesy because they use these sound bites about Jack the Ripper, which I imagine to be taken from an old movie, and they added these dark demonic voices. But the other song, The Evil Painter, was pretty cool because it sounded like an old gothic new wave song, something you would hear from the band Bauhaus. So I like both songs. But now we're almost at the end of the album. There are two songs left. Let's see what they have in store for us. Last two songs actually go in different directions. I was expecting more of the same, but no, they did some different stuff. Let's talk about them. The penultimate track, Cemetaria, had slow and heavy guitar riffs, Halloween sound effects, heavy chugging guitars, but also did something different by bringing in some Middle Eastern sounds, whereas the final song, Evil Never Dies, was like traditional heavy metal. It was like Iron Maiden meets King Diamond with fast and heavy guitars, aggressive sounding vocals, so it was a cool way to end the album. In conclusion, there were a few things that I liked and didn't like about the album. I like that they are continuing that horror sound they pioneered in the late 70s, so I have a lot of respect for this band in doing that. I also like the fact that there was a lot of variety on the album, so the songs didn't sound all the same, except for the first couple of songs, but once I got to about track number 4, they started changing it up. As for the negatives, I thought the production was a little muddy. Maybe they could have sounded a little cleaner, but that might also be a personal preference, as there are also times when I think they overused the horror movie cliches, which I mentioned throughout the video. Other than that, I thought it was pretty good. My score is an 8 out of 10. And I think in October, I'm going to do a video about the best metal albums of 2024 for Halloween, because I can think of 4 of them off the top of my head already. So hopefully I'll remember, or you can remind me in October. But anyway, check out my review of the latest album by Wednesday 13. That is another one of those bands that has a similar style. It's all about like horror and stuff. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give the video a like. Helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.